And we're back. It's Thursday, 2
We're here.
o'clock Eastern Standard Time. Jason's here. I'm here. Zack. We are Market House. And we are so glad that you have joined us again for this awesome time. I know that you really like joining us here. And we hope today you guys will actually ask us some questions, because today we're going to go into something that is very, very something we're passionate about. Obviously, we have a business that's surrounded around this topic. But before I get into that, I just want to welcome you guys and just say we want you guys to be a part of the Winject community. So we want you go to winject.com. Here's an opportunity for you to sign up there to join. We have stuff for listeners and for people who are podcasters. Podcasters or creators. Nice. Hey, I hit it, right? So be sure to go over to winject.com to join that community there, or you can text us at 843-396-2104. Get your phone out. I'm fine with you doing that as I'm talking. I'm long-winded. And so, there's that. So, you guys go and do that right now. So today,
what are we talking about?
We are talking about website design.
Okay.
And every time we mention the word website design, people are going to say immediately start to feel intimidated. I think that happens a lot. I think that we see a lot of people say, "Well, I'm not a wizard." I refer to Jason as a wizard a lot because he does stuff, and I say, "How in the world did you do that?"
I'm a wizard.
Yeah, he's a wizard. Or I'm not a computer genius, so I don't know anything about computers, so I can't put anything together. Now, what we're going to talk about is some tips to have better website designs, have a better professional website designed for your business. Whether you're building it or whether you have somebody else building it for you, these tips are still relevant. I think you should still know these. If you're a podcaster, or if you're a small business owner, if you work for a company that says our website sucks, these things are very helpful, and you can actually present these to your company or have this as part of your conversation when you are putting your website together. So these are the 7 tips that we put together that we see and we feel is relevant. As we go through them, guys, if you have questions, make sure wherever you're watching this, on Facebook, on YouTube, wherever you're watching this later, make sure you comment. We would love to respond back to those questions that you guys have so that we can get you guys the best possible service. So let's dive into
I have an addition to that, or just a reiteration. And while we realize that most people aren't going to go do it themselves, I think it's really important to take heed of the items that we're going to talk about. That way you can speak intelligently to the team that's building it for you, whether it's a person or a company like us. So you can kind of know to hit those points, because, there's a phrase that goes around a lot. It's like, you don't know what you don't know. And if you can speak intelligently, you can be like, oh, hey, what about site speed? What about caching? What about the CSS here? Is that going to cause issues with this? If you can kind of throw out some things, then I think it will improve that relationship with you and whoever's designing it, so that they know that they can actually have a conversation with you about the site and not have to explain a lot of things. So it'll just improve that relationship.
Yeah, well, that, and if somebody's building it for you, it just makes you even more credible, and they're not going to try to pull the rug out from under you and make something doesn't represent you well, because obviously it's your piece, it's your baby, like you want it to represent you well. So let's get into it. We have 7 of these. The first one is make the site easy to use. I cannot stress this enough. It's so frustrating when I go to a website and it's super clunky. It's not easy to use, or it's hard to navigate. I hate when I click on something and then later on I'm like, need to show it to somebody else, and I have no idea where I was at and what I was trying to get to. I hate that. It annoys me to no end. And like, this even goes down to not just where things are placed, CTAs are placed, not just that, but even the language that's used. If it's if it's not easy to understand, then people will leave. If it's clunky and it's not intuitive, people will be frustrated. And I don't know if you know about frustrated people, but they'll leave your site. They'll say, forget it. I'm not going to deal with this. It's a waste of my time. And this is super crucial if you have an e-commerce store, because if you have a shopping cart process that is not simple, it's not quick, and it's not clear, guess what? You just left money on the table, because somebody's going to say, forget it, I'm leaving. That's why Amazon's so successful, because it's super easy to use. It's the easiest process ever. So make sure that whenever you're building your website, whenever you're putting it together, whoever's building it for you, if you're doing it yourself, back of your mind, what I like to do is it easy to use for somebody? Does it make sense for someone who's never interacted with my company before and has never visited my site before? And if that's the case, and anybody, my 6-year-old can sit at the computer and navigate it because she can read and she can see what to do, then I know that I've won. It's easy to use. People don't want to deal with frustrating websites.
Yeah, so, I mean, it's the same with like a brick and mortar store. If you think about it, like if you go in somewhere to shop, they're not going to put the least popular item right at the front door, right? They're not going to put something that sells right at the front door, and they're not going to. It's not going to be like a cluttered mess with just crap everywhere. If they actually want to be able to sell well, they want to focus you. If you think about like stores at the mall, when going to the mall was still a thing, I guess, but like you go in and there's usually like a big display that kind of, so that's like your pop-up or your header on your site, and then. Okay, do I want to go this direction or this direction to this department? Okay, if I'm going to this department, what section of the department am I going to go to? And are things, nice and tidy in the display? And does it tell me a clear message of what I'm getting? Or is it just a muddled mess? So, there's a lot of planning that goes into the user experience of a site and the user interface on how people will engage with it. And, if you don't have somebody who's spending time and thinking that through, then you're going to have issues directly from the start. So one of the biggest things to plan through when you're building your site is user interface, user experience. And a lot of what we suggest is go out and look at sites that you like to use, that you find yourself using, or you like the way it works, and tell that to the person who's building your site. Let them know what you like and what works for you, and then they can get a feel of how they can build this site.
It gives them an example to pull from, so they can hit the bullseye for you.
Right.
It's a funny story. You were talking about stores and having a good experience as soon as you walk in the door. Just a side note, I have a funny story about my brother. When I was in college, I worked at Polo, and he wanted a job during Black Friday. So I was like, yeah, well, let's get you in there. And so he came and they put him to hand out flyers at the front door of like letting people know what the discounts were. And if you know my brother at all, he's an introvert, and that's not the best place to put him. And I laughed. And he was chasing people around the store that he missed that came in. And then it's Black Friday, so there's like people coming in constantly. So he's like chasing people through the store, and it was just really funny. I told him later, I said, he's better off spent like folding shirts or go to the back. So they quickly realized and put that on. So anyways, tip one is make the site easy to use. So why don't you tell me what the second one is?
The second one is site speed. It's always been something that's pretty important. Back in the day, it was more important for just usability and for keeping the experience good for the customer, for lack of a better word. But now it's vital. It's a part of the metrics that Google uses to keep you in the rankings. So if your site is slow as Christmas, it's not going to do as well as competitor sites with similar content. So you got to keep the site fast. So how do you do that? Lots of different ways to keep your site fast. If you're using any of the big content management systems, say like WordPress, for example, there's tons of plugins that you can look for that help with site speed, different things that will take your site through what's called a minification process, essentially. So it's like, so it'll minify the JavaScript or minify the CSS, which essentially takes this big file and compresses it down. And that's typically a pretty good way to do it. There's different plugins that you can use that do these things. So that's one of the big ways. Another way that I always suggest is to make sure that you keep an eye on the file sizes for images that you use on your site. That's a really big one. Photoshop, I would say that there's a nice combination of using something like Photoshop, the desktop version, or there's a free version on the web that will allow you to resize and compress your images. So I usually will take an image, compress it down to like a smaller size, because if you download an image from, one of the sites that we've talked about in our other podcasts, like Unsplash or Pexels, things like that, that have those, that have that licensing thing for you to be able to actually use these on your sites. If you go onto those sites like that and you download one of those things can be 4,000 or 5,000 pixels wide. And typically the viewing window on your standard website is going to be something like, 1,000 pixels wide. So, so take a look at the size of that. So I would go into Photoshop, compress it down, and then I would hit up this site called tinyjpg.com. And when you land there, it's like a little panda bear, and you upload your file, and it will compress it down, and you won't have any loss of the design. So there won't be like any visible compression. It'll just change that file size. I always say it's good to get it under like 1,000 kilobytes. I was like, that's kind of like my goal.
Yeah, I was going to add too, with SiteNow on our platform that we build from, it automatically, doesn't matter what file size, it will optimize for you to keep our site speeds on SiteNow are very, very fast. They load very quickly. They're optimized for that for you, so you don't even have to worry about that. So site speed is very, very important. So we have make it easy to use. Now we have site speed. Before I go into the next one, if you guys have any questions, if you're watching it now, you're watching it later, wherever you're watching it from, drop us a comment. We will follow up with you guys on what the questions you guys have. We want to make sure that you guys get those answered. So the next tip that we have for you is to use negative space. So that white space between blocks of text and images on your page. That like there's a space in between or on the sides. That's called negative space. You can also call it white space. There you go. There's some negative space going on here. Yeah, there you go. I have a couple spots here and here, but so use negative space. There's nothing more frustrating than going to a website and it's completely overwhelmed and cluttered with just text and images, and you're using every maximum space that you have on that website. It's overwhelming. It's completely daunting to look at. No one's going to read it. No one's going to pay attention to what you have to say because there's not enough white space for people to even process it. That's why when you go to blogs, oftentimes you'll see where it's text, image. They fill it up, all that sort of stuff, but there's still a lot of stuff on the sides that are not cluttering away from what you're wanting the user to understand and process through. Right. So using that negative space helps avoid overcrowding. It helps avoid overwhelming people with the information that you're trying to put out. Because your information is the most important thing. Your product, your podcast, whatever you're wanting to communicate is the most important thing. Don't clutter it up with a bunch of stuff just because you want it to fill that space.
I like to think of it as a breathing room for your website.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, so like gives you a minute to say, okay, what am I reading here?
It increases readability. I mean, think about it, that's probably one of the reasons why, like, in school you do like double line spacing. It's there for notes, but it also increases readability, so the lines aren't so smashed together. It just makes sense. just a good design 101 kind of thing.
Yeah. So what's the next one, Jason? What's the fourth tip you got?
Mobile phone.
This thing,
Mobile.
this whole phone.
Yes. Which, I guess we could just talk about responsive design. So I guess we could just say responsive design is number 4. But responsive design, this term's been around for quite a while, but it kind of started out with, well, we had websites when the internet started. We had websites, and we viewed them on our desktop computers. And then as laptops became more prevalent, we started viewing it there. But it was really typically kind of the same viewing experience. And then fast forward to now, where we have, or maybe like 10 years or so ago, where we started to have more tablets and more smartphones. Websites still offered the same viewing experience, and it was really kind of difficult to see, especially when you can't really pinch and zoom very well on a site. So they started this thing called adaptive web design, which is where people were kind of creating websites that were like a stripped down version of their site, but for the web, specifically like on here. So like you go to a site and it wouldn't have all the same content. It would just have like bits and pieces of it because it was adapted. It was just trying to adapt to that device. Well, fast forward a little bit after that to what we have now, which is responsive web design. And responsive web design just means that your website in the full screen desktop iteration versus the tablet iteration versus the phone, it is responding to the window that you're viewing it in. And, there's different techniques that we can do as designers to make it a little bit more adaptive, to change the experience, to make it very specific to a device. But the whole goal is to make sure that the usability is perfect on whatever device. And you don't want to shortchange the experience on a specific device because you're trying to cut corners or because you lend less value to that. It's really, really, really important to make sure that the experience that you provide, especially on mobile now, because we're at a tipping point where things are starting to trend with more visits on the mobile side than on desktop side, or, pretty even split. And depending on what website you have, it's really important to make sure that you are designing for that mobile experience, to make sure that you're giving the mobile users the best possible view of your site.
Yeah, I was looking at a client's site just a little while ago, and it was showing nearly 80% of their views are on mobile. 80%.
And where but the thing is, how do we design websites? What do we use? We use a desktop.
Yeah,
we're not designing websites on here, so it's a little bit of a challenge.
However, I will say that Jason and I, we that's one of the first things we try to do when we design something is, how does it look on a website, or how does the website look on a mobile device first, then desktop second. It's almost like we've had to reverse engineer how we thought about designing websites and saying you have to make sure it looks good on these screens. And if it doesn't look good on the screens, then it doesn't matter what it looks like on the desktops. It's, not effective. Yeah. So I think you're right. I think that we have to make sure that your mobile site or your responsive design on your site is up to date. And I think you mentioned before, Google's penalizing if it's not mobile friendly. So I think most people are getting to that. I think it's rare now to see sites that are not optimized for mobile responsive design. But they're still out there. So yeah, that's a good tip. The fifth tip, we're on tip number 5.
Fifth number 7 tip.
Tip words are hard to use. Is include testimonials.
Yes.
When you're on a website, see, the thing is, like, I am a testimonial reader. I read reviews. I read testimonials. Doesn't matter if I'm buying something really expensive, like a computer, or heck, we're in the process of buying a new car. I'm going to read reviews on cars. Obviously, those are big purchases. But I'm the type of person who will read a review on a cable for my computer, because I want to see what people's reviews are, what their experience was with this product before I purchase it. Even if I'm only going to spend $7 or $7,000, doesn't matter. I still want to read and understand what people's experience were with the product. That tells me if I'm that way, I'm 100% sure I'm not the only person that does that. So having those testimonials, having those reviews on your site is crucial. People already know when they come to your site that you're going to speak well of your product, well of your podcast, well of your services. They already know that. But seeing it from somebody else usually goes a long, long way, especially if it's from somebody who has some credibility, some authority, a celebrity, or somebody that's known in the space. If you have that already out there, use it. Put that on your site. People are going to be able to connect with that and more than likely convert because of that, as opposed to all of your bells and whistle features and all of the good things you have to say about your product. If your testimonials are on there and they're glowing, they're doing really well, then the likelihood of somebody converting is going to be much higher at that point.
Yeah, dude, it's that social proof, man. It's like people make those buying decisions based on what other people say. Like people ask that feedback. I know that you asked, like, I've seen you post on social media a couple different times, like, hey, I'm looking for such and such product. Do you guys have any suggestions?
Yeah.
And it's, it's the same thing. And funny story, it's June 3rd today. Our buddy Matt over in the UK, he is a t-shirt designer, and he got connected up with Samuel L. Jackson and did a shirt design, with him. And Samuel L. Jackson posted the shirt design today, this morning on his Instagram. And as of last check, it's got like 160,000 likes. And our buddy's Instagram is blowing up. His online store is blowing up just because of the social proof of Samuel L. Jackson posting this t-shirt that he's wearing. So people are like, oh, well, if he's got it, then I've got to have that. So
I want it. Yeah.
It's that mentality of, oh, well, somebody else has been there, so I'll do it now too. Yeah.
And this is a freebie. This has nothing to do with tips for professional website design. But I will say, if you have negative reviews on Google or negative reviews on wherever that those are posted, respond to those. Because I like to see that. If I see a company who has had a negative review or a negative post, seeing that company respond to that person who left that negative review goes a long way for me, because I can look at that negative review and read it and sympathize with that person and say, well, now I don't know if I want to buy this product. But then I see that the company has responded to it, and that the way that they've handled it makes me feel even more comfortable. So just because there's a negative review or negative testimonial about your product or service or whatever it is, you can turn that bad situation into a really good situation if you stay on top of responding to those things. So that's free. Has nothing to do with what we're talking about today. Well, I mean, it sort of does, but that's a huge thing for you to be doing if you're not already doing it. Really quick, guys, we're on tip number 5. We're about to go on to tip number 6 when Jason's going to share that here in just a second. So we only have 7 of these, so we're nearing the end. Let's hear from you guys. If you have questions, please drop that wherever you are viewing this live today. Make sure that you go to winject.com, check out the offers we're doing that we have for listeners, for podcast creators, whatever you are doing. Make sure that you're connected there. Also, if you text 843-396-2104, you're automatically in our community. You get access to a lot of other things. A lot of news and information will be communicated through that community. So make sure you text that. It's 843-396-2104. We want to hear from you. All right, Jason, what is tip number 6?
Tip number 6. I don't know. What should tip number 6 be?
You know what? Let's just wing it.
Let's make it up. Tip number 6, have landing pages on your site. That's a big thing. Seems like a little bit of a no-brainer.
You say landing pages like for like airplane, like
yes, very, very large landing pages.
Land the page.
Yeah, Yeah, perfect for very long. I'm thinking like a landing page that's maybe like, I don't know, a couple
long.
football fields long. Yeah.
If you can do that. Yeah, that's always a winner.
Okay, that joke is done. So the landing page. So a lot of times we get to people and they want to build a website. They don't, and they have products that they want to offer, but they are wanting to go with like a full long landing page where it's just like one long scrolling page. They don't really want to break up content. And while that's fine, in certain circumstances, you really want to make sure that you have at least a page set up on your site for specific products. And for a multitude of reasons. One of them is, for SEO, so you can get some specific content out there on a specific page that is all about that one certain product that you have. But it's also important because you want to, for us, for example, we have certain landing pages on our site to send to potential clients. If we're talking about a specific product. So, if we're talking about our managed SEO product, we'll send them the link to our managed SEO product with reviews and explainer videos and white papers and all kinds of stuff associated with that. So it's kind of like this very, like everything that you can think about that has to do with that one product, you pack it into a page. There's also, people consider those to be called funnels, like funnel pages. So where you land on that and you can interact with that page, you can buy that product or whatever it is. But it's really important to make sure that you're highlighting your products the best way possible. And when you clutter them up on a landing page with like other things, it can mess up the message. It can confuse it. So landing pages, it's important to have at least one for each of those key pillar kind of content things on your site, right?
Yeah, I think that's very, very important that I think a lot of people miss. And I think that there's a misconception. Well, I have a website, so that's my landing page. No, you want to a lot of times you want to dial into specific things that you want to be able to send on a consistent basis. It's easy to get to and get the CTA that you want based on whatever person you're trying to reach. Okay, we've reached tip number 7. This is it. Have a good day.
There are no more tips. After this,
tip number 7 is tip number 7. That's it. No, I'm just kidding. We do have one. But yeah, you guys, if you have any questions, please feel free. Say hello. We'd love to hear from you. Mm-hmm. So the last one is, don't be afraid to do your own thing. Trends are great. Trends are awesome. There's all kinds of, it changes every year. Sometimes it changes every couple months. A website trend will change. But that's what they are. They're trends. They're going to die off at some point. So try to stay. Sometimes trends will work for your site and for your brand or for what you're trying to communicate. And sometimes they're just not. And it's okay to step away from that trend and say, well, this just doesn't fit for us. This doesn't work for us. Well, do what works for you, and don't be afraid to do that. Because the thing is, if you try to force it to fit into a trend, it's not going to, one, it's going to feel forced. It's not going to feel natural. And 2, I think you're going to have a product that's going to last for X amount of time. And then once that trend goes, then you're just constantly changing that site, constantly changing it. That's a lot to manage. It's also exhausting. One of the examples that we like to use is stock photos. That was the thing. Everybody used stock photos. It was like the be all end all. But that doesn't mean that you need to be using stock photos. Actually, we've said it before on this podcast, and we say it to clients all the time. Photos make or break a website. And because stock photos are so easily accessible these days, people can catch on to that pretty quickly. Now, me and Jason are unique in this because we do look at stock photos, or at least I do, on a regular basis. And multiple times a week, I will look at an ad online. I've actually been driving down the road and saw the billboard, those motion billboards, and then obviously the old school, just static billboards. And I've recognized either stock video or stock photos on those pieces. And so I'm starting to recognize that. And if it's a popular model that's on there, I think that you got to be careful with that. So that's just one example. So sometimes trends are good. Sometimes trends are bad. You have to make the decision to whether you want to follow that trend or you're okay with just doing your own thing. And that's okay. Get outside the box.
Well, I think one of the things that you can tack onto that for doing your own thing is making sure that your website is a good representation of your brand voice. So like your brand voice is its own thing. So you want to make sure that your website, properly reflects that. So if your brand is weird and goofy or silly or very serious, you want to make sure that your website is a good representation of that, not only in the color scheme, but in the text and dialogue that you have. So it's important that if you are different, that you highlight that difference and you make sure that your website is in line with that.
Yeah, exactly. So that's the 7 tips we have for you today. So these are just a few of the things that you should keep in mind with web design. There's an endless, we could spend the entire time every Thursday talking about these things. So just make sure that you follow these things. Make sure that you want to make sure your site looks clean. It's not too crowded. You want to make sure it's easy to use. You want to make sure it's responsive to mobile or tablet, doesn't matter what it is. You want to make sure that you're giving the best user experience regardless. And we get the design, designing a website might be overwhelming. We would like to help you with that. We have SiteNow, we have Market House, that both those companies can help you out with whatever needs you have. We can help you. If you're part of the WinJect community, if you go to sitenowlive.com/WinJect, we have a special offer for specific WinJect community members. And how do you become a WinJect community? How do you become a WinJect community member?
WinJect.com.
WinJect.com. Do what?
/join.
/join. Yes, we have stuff for podcast listeners and podcast creators. And then make sure that you sign up for our community, get the latest information by texting 843-396-2104.
Yeah, and you can hit us up. You can hit us up online at Jason Marlowe, at Zack Tatum, and then at WinJect Studios on most social platforms. So you can send us a direct message that way. And then also, I want to give a quick promo for what we're talking about next week, and probably for a couple of weeks too.
Yeah, let's break this up. Let's break this up in a 3-part series. I think this would easily be something we need for 3 weeks.
Yeah, so we're going to talk about a bunch of low budget, no budget marketing ideas for small businesses and podcasters. So low budget, no budget marketing ideas, different ways that you can use whatever small budget you have to make a difference and grow your brand. Cool.
Yeah, let's be real. I mean, with small businesses and podcasters, your budget's not a massive thing normally for marketing. So this is an easy way for you guys to get some wins. So that is it for us. We are signing off. We will see you. Jason's like, bye. We thank you guys for tuning in. Next week, let's get some comments, and we'd love to hear from you guys. If you still have some questions from basically the topics that we talked about today, leave those in the comments. You can also text us at the number we've already been mentioning multiple times in this episode. We would love to hear from you guys and talk to you guys. But until next Thursday, we'll see you.
Let's hit that outro.
This broadcast is brought to you by WinJect Studios. We are an all-in-one educational platform for podcasters that revolutionizes how hosts leverage content to increase engagement with listeners, downloads, and income. We come together to focus on community, collaboration, and collective impact. For more information on how you can interact directly with our hosts, access exclusive live content with offers you can't get anywhere else from our official partners, join our purpose-driven community by visiting www.winject.com. If you're ready to build a career doing what you love, then we're ready to see you there.